Hi and welcome to this lesson on Android widgets. I'm Norman McIntyre. I'll be your instructor. The topics we're going to cover, we're going to look at a high level of what is an Android widget. We'll pick a few selected widgets and discuss what they do and how you interact with them. We'll look at a widget design pattern when you're using Java code. And we'll also look at a widget design pattern for when you're using XML Layout. We'll pick a few selected widgets and discuss them in a little more detail, and we'll end by using the toast, talking about how the toast is one of the easiest to use and also one of the most frequently used widgets. So let's start where the documentation is at. If you go to developer.android.com and you go under the developer section, you'll find one of the topics is Android.widget. Of course, Android.widget is a Java namespace. In fact, it's the name of a package, Android widget, that contains all of the widgets that come with Android. At the very top, when you're looking over the documentation, you'll see that the widget package contains mostly visual UI elements for you to use in your application. And you could think of this as a catalog of user interface items that you can pick and choose and use in your application to provide a nice graphical interface. All of these are coming from this Android.widget namespace, and there's really two ways you can use them. One we can use as Android implementation. That is, we can write Android code that creates a widget, puts the widget on our view, and lets the user interact with the widget. In addition, we can use XML Layout. So the XML Layout knows what a widget is and how to lay it out. So we really have a choice. We can use Java, we can use XML, and we can combine those. We can use both XML and Java. Now let's talk about a few selected widgets. The toast is one of the most frequently used widgets because the toast can pop up a short message very briefly. It will appear on the screen and then it will disappear. So that one's used quite often. Another one that's used quite often would be the text view. The text view allows you to display text on the screen. What's nice about this control, you can display a little bit of text, say just one line of text, or you can display several lines of text. In fact, it's made to adjust as needed to show however much text you'd like it to show. Related to that is an edit text. The edit text allows you to input text into the system. For example, if you wanted to ask, what is your name? Well, the user needs to enter their name, and how they could do that is with an edit text. And they could type in their name directly into this edit text control. So you could say that the text view allows you to output text, that is, display text to the user, whereas the edit text allows the user to input text into your application. There's also button widgets. In fact, there's a number of button widgets. I've chosen 3 here that are some of the most common. Probably the most common is just called button. By the way, all of these names that I show here are the exact names that you'll use both in Java and in XML. So they both have the same names, whether you're using Java or whether you're using XML. So button is a very common way to get input from the user knowing they touched a particular button. There's also a checkbox. A checkbox allows you to check a box on or off, and it turns out the checkbox also works like a button. There's also a radio button. A radio button allows you to choose an item within what's called a group of radio items. Once again, that's a user interface control, and you can choose to use it by using these widgets. There's others, kind of Perhaps at the other end of complexity would be the date picker. The date picker is a widget that allows you to pick dates. You can ask the user to select the time and date that you want a certain event to occur, and they can use this date picker to enter that information. There's also a text clock. Suppose you'd like to display the time within your application and you want to display it as text. Well, this text clock widget does exactly that. In fact, you're saying that each widget has a specific functionality that it provides, and the idea is you can grab the functionality in your application just by using these widgets. How about if you have an image? Well, there's a widget called an image view. The purpose of the image view is to take your image and show it in a view on the device. So you'd have an image inside an image view. Image view makes it appear on the screen. Also, suppose you want to have an image that you could click on and it would call you back. Well, notice we also have an image button. So the image button allows you to have a button that has an image behind it. There are many others. In fact, the Android platform gives you lots of choices of widgets, and we'll be using a number of these as we go through the course. Now, what's the design pattern of using a widget using 100% Java code? Well, it turns out all you have to do is create a new instance of a widget. For example, saying new text view of this. What that says is create a new text view and create it in the context of the activity, which is where the this is coming from. So create a text view. So in this particular slide, I'm showing we have a variable called text view, which is created by saying new text view of this. So that's using 100% Java code. On the other hand, suppose you want to use 100% XML code. So in this case, to use the XML code, notice we would have a text view begin. So this would be called an XML element where text view begins. And we have another text view ends at the other end. So we have text view and text view end. So those are the elements. When we look at using this in a design pattern, notice we're going to use XML and Java together. So what we do is in our XML layout, we define a text view and we give it an ID. In fact, this is not only useful for a text view, this concept of giving it an ID works for any widget. The message here is if you want to have a widget that you can access under program control, you need to give it an ID. And here on the right, we're seeing this Android :ID equals, and the ID we're giving it, we say @ plus ID slash. So the @ plus ID slash, what that's telling the system is automatically generate a numeric ID for this, but also where it says the text view on the end, you're also giving it a name you can access under program control. So we take our XML layout and our Java code can then access the XML layout using this ID. In fact, here's an example of that. It says, I want to access your text view, so I'm going to use find view by ID. That method, find view by ID, says give me an ID and I will look up that text view, which in this case the text view was inside our XML. So two interesting ways of pulling that out, getting the ID and saying find view by ID. Let's end talking about the Android.Widget.Toast. That you use a toast to quickly display a message to the user. As I said, it's one of the easiest widgets to use. It does not interrupt the user's workflow. That is, the user can be working away and suddenly a toast appears, but the user doesn't have to respond to it. It just goes away on its own. In fact, it will auto disappear after just a few seconds. And as an example, imagine you had code like this that said toast.make TextView. And when you say text.make the text view, we would give it a this, which means for this activity. We would give it a message. We would give it a length to stay around, which in this case would say toast.length. And then finally we would call a method on that called show. So the idea is show this text view, and it would then appear on the screen. Thank you for joining me.